You are now entering the Rawrrzone.
USO 82.3 FM, where the independent artists are now streaming on all smart TVs. Decide the Live 365 channel and search PUSO. PUSO 82.3 FM, where the independent artists are the stars.
You're now listening to the Evening Rush Network.
All right. What's up, world? Let me get out of here. I had to show off, for a second, our illustrious guest for today. If we lucky, guys, you could catch the Rawrrzone mix on Booster 82.3 FM and the Evening Rush Radio Network next Wednesday and, of course, next Friday. Today, we're getting into the stuff that really matters. So let's start from the beginning. I am your homegirl, Ivy, Katie, whatever you want to call me. Just talk to me nice, because our guest today, Brian Romero, does not like ugly. We are here. Welcome to the Rawrrzone. You can catch us everywhere. Visit our website, www.rawrzonenyc.com, or subscribe on YouTube at Rawrrzone NYC. We are live at our radio home, the Fuso 82.3 FM, every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course, the Evening Rush Radio Network every Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you can stream us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you may get your podcast fix. Whew. You would think by now I would be used to this. We are powered by the PNSBC. Shout out to Phipps Neighborhood, Andre Coney Brooks, and everyone involved with this amazing initiative. The PNSBC brings together top high school players from across New York City. The league emphasizes competition, education, community service, and personal growth, preparing players to succeed both on and off the court. And all games are streamed on YouTube at youtube.com// PNSBC the league. And of course, follow them on Instagram at PNSBC. Right now, as we speak, the Wings Beacon Elite is facing off at with Harlem PAL in Harlem. So good luck to you guys today. But for our PNSBC schedule for week 4, Saturday, March 28th, 2026. Unfortunately, we cannot attend the games, but we can watch it on youtube.com// at PNSBC the league. You have your 12 o'clock game with Metro Motion versus the SBCC Spartans. We got the Sotomayor Jaguars versus the Wings Beacon Elite. And then, of course, at 2 o'clock, we have WC Wolfpack versus EBA Knights. It is something you really want to get involved in. It's going to be a crazy time. Remember, the Rawrrzone sent you. And, of course, tune in for all of their IG Live interviews with the Wings Beacon Elite on our Instagram at Rawrrzone NYC. Whew. We are on the road to the Give Back. Our first official Give Back event of the year will be on May 30th, 2026. If you are an artist looking to open your audience, or open your talent to a new audience, be able to get promotional opportunities, to network with people that are in your industry, please link up with this. If you were part of our 2025 Give Back season, whether you donated, partnered, volunteered, or simply support love and showed love and support, because of you, we raised $5,200 out of our $10,000 goal raised. We also gave opportunities for artists to have media interviews. They had on location opportunities, and we all do this not only for the artists. We are not only doing this in the memory of Sean Segui. We're doing this for the Sarcoma Foundation of America, that advocates and looks into research on an aggressive cancer called sarcoma. It is a cancer so rare, fewer than 130 cases have ever been reported worldwide. It is a cancer that hides within blood clots, often undetected by scans, and tragically is discovered too late. In my friend Sean Seguid's case, it was found during emergency open heart surgery that ultimately saved his life long enough for him to fight a year and a half to advocate and to educate an entire community about a cancer that most people never heard of. Sarcoma is known as a forgotten cancer. It makes up less than 1% of adult cancers, yet impacts both adults and children. Symptoms are also mistaken for everyday aches and injuries and can be found in diagnoses for a lot of athletic injuries and making everyday diagnosis and treatment extremely difficult. This is why our vision matters. This is why awareness matters. This is why the mission matters. Through this give back, we raise the funds for the SFA, supporting research, and we also take the moment not only to honor Sean, not only to honor the caregivers and those that are involved with somebody that goes through sarcoma. We also honor those we lost, more people that we lost. We met Kelly 2 years ago in the Race to Cure Sarcoma in Philadelphia, and she became a friend of the Rawrrzone. She was on our show. She helped us advocate and fight. Kelly lost her battle after 10 years of being diagnosed with sarcoma and going through it. She passed away in September of 2025. Her strength, joy, and spirit continue to inspire everything we do. So if you are looking to be involved, we're always looking for more community partners. We are always looking for more sponsors, artists. Please get involved. Shout out to Singer Hall for being our official home for the Road to the Give Back. They are a staple in the Woodside, Sunnyside community. So please go support them. They just celebrated 8 years. Shout out to Alex and the team there. So before I do my normal spiel of an intro, I want to play this video I found of our guest. As a family, as a child of a first generation immigrant family, it's always difficult when you hear their stories about how they grew up compared to how we grew up now, and with everything passing as far as legislation, because we normally don't get into politics on the Rawrrzone, but we're seeing a lot of things happening in our backyard. And I went out with my mom one day to go get mellow groomed, and we ended up meeting this gentleman, Brian Romero, who was in the middle of the freezing cold doing a shredding event just to help people and raise awareness for his campaign. But I came across this video, and I feel like this would more depict the passion he has for helping us. And then, of course, I'll give everyone the normal spiel, but give me 1 second.
Immigrants are under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. All right, thank you all. My name is Brian Romero, and I'm a candidate for the New York State Assembly for District 34, running to represent my neighbors in Astoria, Corona, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and Queens. Thank you so much to the Democratic Socialists of America, to JFREDS, to UAW, to Make the Road New York for being here today. I just came from petitioning in Jackson Heights, and let me tell you what we are experiencing on the doors. Fear. Fear. I've been petitioning across Astoria, across Corona, Woodside, all these neighborhoods. In this district, we are one of the most immigrant-rich communities across our country. Woo, woo, my neighbors, working families, children, moms, siblings, grandparents, they are afraid. Shame! And that is a shame, and it is on purpose. It is the role of fascism to make our communities afraid, to take from them, to surveil them, to kill them. That is what we are talking about here. We are talking about protecting New Yorkers from being attacked.
And when we understand, we gotta fight back.
That's right, we gotta fight back. So we are here to demand a simple thing. If the governor governor is going to continue to talk about her immigrant heritage
Then we don't need to
and
vote.
talk about the Statue of Liberty,
Come on.
then she should do something
About it.
about that.
That's right.
Because we are tired of immigrant communities being used as pawns
That's
in
right.
her electoral project to just elect herself and back
Come
her
on.
rich donors.
That's all. That's all she does.
But in reality, she
Come
is
on.
the only one getting in the way of us putting a barrier between our immigrant neighbors and ICE. And we have seen what happens because of inaction. Minneapolis, murders of civilians. I am tired of Democrats talking about public safety when our folks are under attack and unsafe now. So Governor Hochul,
Come on.
we are here to tell you directly, do not come to Jackson Heights, do not come to Astoria, do not come to Corona, East Elmhurst, or Woodside if you are not going to do your job,
That's right.
protect New Yorkers,
That's
and
right.
pass Unity for All and dignity not detention exactly as they are written.
Our guest tonight, from growing up right here in Queens to working behind the scenes, Brian Romero, the candidate for New York State Assembly District 34, representing Astoria, Corona, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and Woodside, had built his career around advocating for working class families, immigrant communities, and equitable access to housing, healthcare, and transportation. From a deputy director role, he's now stepping forward to leave with a platform focused on affordability, tenant protections, universal health care, and making New York safe for everyone. I need everyone to get their biggest Rawrrzone hello for Brian Romero.
Hi,
Hello,
Katie.
sir.
How's it going? Thank you for
I'm
having
good.
me.
No problem. I'm sorry. I'm a history major and I love journalism, so I actually like go in and
No, it's all good.
I read the detailed research. But for those that don't know, tell us who you are and also the role that you're running for, because not many people, or I want to say not ignorant, but not everyone really understands that it's not just like, okay, the Senate's helping us. There's other positions that are closer to home.
Totally. Well, thank you so much again for having me, Katie, on Warzone. It's so awesome to be able to be with you, and even more so to have an Astoria native amplifying the work that we are doing on our campaign, but also our work in the state legislature. So, my name is Brian Romero. I use he, him, and his pronouns. I was born in a basement apartment in East Elmhurst in the district, and I grew up in an immigrant household that was very poor. Around 7 years of age, we were homeless because we could not keep up with costs. So the reality of many New Yorkers across our city and state of being one paycheck or crisis away from being homeless is something that I've lived myself. And it's something that I deeply believe that in a city and a state as rich as ours, with so many millionaires and billionaires and corporations who are doing even better than before on Wall Street, that we should simply not have New Yorkers going to bed hungry or homeless. And so I am running for New York State Assembly, District 34. And for folks who do not know, in the state level, we have two bodies of the legislature. We have the New York State Assembly, which is 150 members across the state. And they basically are districts that represent around 145,000 people, right? Democrats, Republicans, people who are not registered, period. Then there's the state Senate, which has 63 seats across the entire state, and they represent around 330 or 40,000 individuals. So I'm running for New York State Assembly District 34, which encompasses the neighborhoods of Astoria, Corona, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and Woodside. I've lived in four of these five neighborhoods, but pretty much grew up around each of them at different points in my life. I was the chief of staff to the current assembly member, Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, who is now running for state senate. And in that time, we were successful in securing universal school meals, hundreds of millions of dollars, to ensure that every child or student in every school across our state could access a free breakfast and lunch in their schools. And why that's important is because we've had that in New York City for so long, but we didn't have that in parts of Long Island, in Westchester, in the Mid Hudson Valley, in so many places. And so we worked very hard with the assembly member to ensure that we can get that kind of investment, because we simply believe that every student should be able to be nourished when they're going to school. We also worked on things like establishing an abortion fund when Roe v. Wade fell, because we understood that New York needed to be a leader on reproductive rights, especially at this time when those rights are under attack. And in my career, I went on to the state Senate, where I now am senior advisor to State Senator Kristen Gonzalez, a socialist in office. I'm a proud Democratic socialist myself. And in that office, the senator has worked very hard to ensure that we are regulating AI, artificial intelligence, because of its really major impacts on our workforce, on workers, but also the way in which we do life every day, right? There's a number of individuals who use chatbots, or the large language models that we're accustomed to, the chat GPTs and such of the world, for
Mhm.
all kinds of things. And that has taken from various industries. We've seen so many industries lose workers to AI because these jobs are being automated. So all that to say, in all of that time, I believe that I have built the kind of necessary skill set to advocate for our neighbors in all of the district on a host of different issues. And I'm really excited that I got to meet you. You saw me in action getting
Yeah, I
signatures
did.
from our neighbors, and that is really the first step, and I think that that's important. I know that you don't have sometimes political folks on, but just so folks understand, when somebody has declared themselves as a candidate, they have to get 500 signatures for a state assembly race, from registered Democrats in the district that they are running in order to qualify and just get on the ballot. That's step number one. So that's what you saw me doing, talking to our neighbors and making sure that we are educating them about this process so that they understand it, but
So
also
did we
talking to
get
them.
the 500 signatures already?
Yeah, we're past our goal at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, we're pretty much past 1,000 at this point. But it's always good, to get like 3 times more the minimum, just in case the signatures get challenged or anything. But also because it's an opportunity, like you and I had, to meet new neighbors and new folks who may or may not know about the political process and educate them a little bit, hear a little bit about what they care about, get the kind of data so that we can hopefully come back around, talk to them about why we are running our platform and why we want them to come out and vote for us.
How did it feel to be running for the seat that was originally held by RDJ?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I told you a little bit about my history. I grew up in the public school system. So I went to public school like K to 12, and then got my associate's degree at CUNY, my bachelor's in CUNY, and my master's in CUNY. I studied to be a social worker, and I was a psychotherapist for about 5 to 6 years, um, working mostly with vulnerable communities, low income folks, immigrants, LGBTQ folks, working on trauma and substance use issues and other mental health issues, depression and anxiety. I didn't really think that I would find my way into policy work and then politics and government, right? I was not unlike so many New Yorkers across our city and state who thought, man, these folks don't listen to everyday people. They're not really there for us. They're not really trying to advocate for our needs. But I met Cecilia Gentili, who was a trans leader and somebody who fought for things like the decriminalization of sex work. And she said, I'm always seeing you at these rallies and protests and things with elected officials. Why are you in the mental health department? And I said, I really care about healing people's deep pain and trauma. That's something that matters a lot to me. And she said, I hear you, but I think that if you worked in policy work and helped change the laws and systems, that would help heal people on a bigger scale. And it was odd. I didn't think about it in that way, but then I eventually did go into policy work where I advocated for the needs of LGBTQ communities, but also people living with HIV or AIDS at the city, state, and federal level. So I would zigzag between Albany and Washington, D.C., and come back to New York City for like 2 days and then do it all over again. And we fought for things like healthcare access for immigrant communities, but also funding at the national level so that we could work to eliminate the HIV/AIDS epidemic, but also work on things like harm reduction because we know the substance use epidemic, the drug epidemic, has been really harmful to a lot of communities. And so I did that for about 2 years, and then met Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. She asked me to be her chief of staff after she won her election, and I didn't know that I wanted to do that, to be honest, because I really enjoyed being an advocate and being on the other side of it. But I thought maybe it's the time to be a bridge for all these different advocates who are fighting for housing, who are fighting for healthcare, who are fighting for criminal justice reform, who are fighting to make sure that we don't have over policing in our communities. And so I thought it was going to be a year and I was just going to go back to advocacy. But a year became, 4.5. I'm very proud of the work that we have done. Didn't think that I would end up being a candidate. But when Jessica announced that she was running for the state Senate, we spoke, and I spoke with neighbors, and here I am before you as a candidate for this race. It's still a little surreal sometimes, but I tell myself that this is just an extension of the work that I've been doing for over 5 years, just in a different way, and it feels right in this moment to try to put myself forward, do the best that I can for our working class and immigrant communities, use the skill set that I've garnered over the couple of years, and fight like hell for our working class families.
You also, with the reform that you were trying to do to help people with HIV and AIDS, you also started a program allowing to have prep for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
prep.
that was legislation that I advocated for in Albany, in the state legislature, was to expand pre-exposure prophylaxis. Some people don't know this, but it is, preventive medication that one can take to avoid the transmission of HIV from one person to another. It's highly effective. It has helped us in reducing rates across the city and state in our communities of color and our low-income communities, and even our communities where people use drugs. And so I advocated for the expansion of that, as well as post exposure prophylaxis, which is what someone can take after they think that they or believe that they have been exposed potentially to HIV, as a way to prevent that further transmission. So yeah, those are pieces of legislation that I advocated for, things like that. Things like ensuring that veterans who were LGBTQ and who left the armed forces and wanted to access their benefits but couldn't because they had been dishonorably discharged. We were advocating at the state level to make sure that the courts could change the documentation after we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to ensure that they can actually access their benefits. And things like gender neutral bathrooms, because we know that trans folks and people who are non binary deserve to access a restroom just like anybody else in our city and state.
Sorry, I have like all these notes here.
No, it's okay. The other thing that we worked on that is still very much dear to my heart is a piece of legislation called Coverage for All,
Yeah.
which is legislation that would allow us to provide healthcare access to undocumented New Yorkers, because depending on the types of status they have, sometimes they may not be able to access healthcare in the same way that myself or others can. And so I've advocated for that for a number of years. We've not been as successful on that front. We've had some changes. We've been able to secure some healthcare access for people above the age of 65 or individuals who are pregnant. But I firmly believe that healthcare is a human right. We should be able to all access healthcare, regardless of our immigration status, regardless of our employment, regardless of where we live. And so that's something that I've been very passionate in advocating for as well.
As a leader right now, especially with immigrant rights, how are you feeling about what's really happening right in our backyard?
Yeah, I mean, you played that video in the beginning. I was angry. I'm still angry. I again, my parents came from Colombia with very little, but with a dream to raise a family here, provide them opportunities. And we have not lived up to that dream in our city, in our state, in our nation, right? Immigrants are under attack more than ever. Civilians are under attack more than ever. And I'm in these group chats, under Hands Off New York City, which is a initiative across our country, really to educate everyday folks on how to push back on fascism and the oligarchy and the Trump administration and ICE. And these chats go off throughout the day of people seeing ICE in the community. They either take pictures of them, the car or the plates or these people in vests, and they are increasingly coming to our neighborhoods. And it is very scary. My mom, even said uh, some weeks ago, or some months ago rather, she said, do am I a danger of them detaining me and deporting me on site, even if I have citizenship? And maybe in the first administration or even before that, I would have said like you're gonna be okay, like just carry your ID on you. But I didn't know what to tell her in that moment. Because the truth is that ICE has become an anti-civilian force that doesn't care about anyone. They simply want to push forward this white supremacist agenda to erase immigrant communities, those who are allies to them, family members. They've killed people in Minneapolis, as I said in that video. And it's truly scary and it's dangerous. And it is an affront to our democracy and our way of life. And so I am scared. I am angry that our families and neighbors are scared to go to their own, delis, to drop off their children, to go to work, to go to school. No one should have to live with that fear in their own neighborhoods, in their homes. And one of the things that I was saying in that video too was part of the process is getting these signatures, right? And so I will knock on doors basically every day. I'm out there knocking on doors, talking to our neighbors about our campaign and why we are running and trying to get them to sign for us so that we can qualify to get on the ballot. But I've been experiencing a lot of hesitance and fear and distrust. And I sometimes hear folks on the other side of the door who are, maybe watching TV or cooking or cleaning or something, or they're talking to each other. And once I knock on the door, even though it's a friendly knock, I'm very intentional about the way that I knock. As like it's like a dun, 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 like a friendly kind of knock. They're still not answering, and I can hear them on the other side. And part of it is they're afraid to open their own doors. They're afraid of who is on the other side of that door, and that they will be pulled from their own homes, from their own families, that they don't know what will happen to their children or their parents or their other neighbors if they open those doors. That is on purpose. Fascism and oligarchy, this administration is purposely trying to make our communities afraid, communities of color, immigrant communities, low income communities. They're trying to make us afraid to not engage in the political process because they know that if they can make us afraid, if they could reduce our political activity, if they could cause us to stay in our homes and not engage and not organize and not push back, that fascism will continue to pervade the country, sink deeper and deeper, and make us all unsafe, while the millionaire and billionaire class continue to get richer and richer as all of us struggle. And so I am deeply afraid for them. I'm angry. I am disappointed in our Democratic leadership at the national level that have just not done enough to push back on ICE and to push back on the Trump regime. And that's all of our national leaders, from the Senate leaders to the House leaders. They need to do more to protect our communities from ICE. But in that interim, it is really important to elect progressive, leftist, socialist members to state legislatures who can serve as a firewall or a barrier between the worst of the federal government and this oligarchy and this fascism and our neighbors who we care deeply about.
What can we do, right? Because I mean, being from a story, being from like this our area and being in our district, you know how everyone is like the
Mm-hmm.
text messages, the hood landline, like yo, don't go to
Yep.
this area. You
Mm-hmm.
what more can we do? Not only just as assemblymen and person in media, but us as individuals that kind of help people one not feel afraid to walk out that door.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna get stuck in a situation where ICE does approach you, because a lot of people sometimes don't know what to do, and then they end up in worse
Mm-hmm.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I can tell people to not feel afraid, but the truth is it's really scary. But there are things we can do, right? I would really encourage folk to look up hands off New York City. Just type it into Google. No ChatGPT, right? We gotta get rid of ChatGPT. But looking at that, looking for those resources, the know your rights information, right? It's really important that all of us as everyday folks, as an electorate, are more educated about what our rights are, as folks, residents in the state, citizens or non-citizens, as we walk the streets, whether it's going to school, going to a hospital, going to a church, whatever the case is. Those trainings are happening a lot across our city and state. Nonprofits are providing them, different groups like Indivisible Jackson Heights, and Indivisible Western Queens, and other groups in Astoria, groups like COV and groups like DSA and the Working Families Party are providing these trainings on an ongoing basis. So what I would say is anything that we do is valuable, but do something, right? Even if it's just educating yourself about your own rights as you go to work, as you go to school, whatever the case is really valuable, because I firmly believe that each time we exercise our knowledge and our rights and push back on this tyranny, the more we are pushing back on them and saying we will not stand by and just let you do anything to us. And so that's the first step, is to really educate yourselves, try to take those trainings, try to learn more and read more about what your rights are. And then there are other opportunities where you can plug into very neighborhood specific groups and learn how to organize, whether that's learning rapid response or learning ICE Watch, right? How to detect if someone is an ICE agent or not, or if they're just a NYPD officer, or if they're a transit cop, or whatever the case is. And then from there, figuring out what else feels right for you, right? I think everybody is gonna have to determine how we engage based also on our own identities, right? So I have citizenship. It doesn't mean that ICE won't harm me in some way. That's a reality. But I think my ability to say I am gonna go out there and see if that car is ICE, or has a license plate that I should be tracking in the chats, is maybe different from how other people are going to engage. But I think that we all need to be doing our best, even sharing that information when you see it. Like, we all scroll sometimes through IG. If you see information about knowing your rights, whether it's Hands Off New York City or DSA or the Working Families Party or Make the Road New York or these other groups, share it, repost it. That's a small thing that we can do, but it's always important to share that kind of information. And then, right now in the state legislature, the governor and our state legislature, the assembly members and the senators, are negotiating the budget. And part of the negotiations actually are immigrant protections. And they're negotiating right now how far they're going to go in terms of protections. And I think that every one of us should be picking up the phone, calling the governor, Governor Kathy Hochul, but also our assembly member and our senator, and saying, pass New York for All. That is a bill that would make it so that ICE cannot collaborate with local law enforcement across our state. And that's important because right now, if the federal government wanted to activate local law enforcement and turn them into ICE agents, they could do that. They could share information back and forth about people's whereabouts, et cetera, where they're going, where they're accessing services. So we really need much more of a barrier between our immigrant communities and everyday residents and ICE. So please look up Hands Off New York City, educate yourself about your rights, pick up the phone, call your assembly member, call your state senator, call the governor, tell them to pass New York for All. It's deeply important, even if it's just that, right? We don't have to be super seasoned advocates or anything. You don't have to work for an elected official or anything like that. Simply just Google, New York State Senate, New York State Assembly. You will find that there is a link there that says who is your assembly member, who is your senator. You put in your address. It will tell you who your state senator and assembly member is. There'll be a phone number there. Call them and tell them, my name is Brian Romero. I live at this address. You don't even have to provide an apartment number. You could just sometimes provide the address. And you can say, and I'm calling to make sure that our assembly member, our senator, the governor fights for immigrant communities and passes New York for All this session, because we cannot let ICE into our neighborhoods to hurt our neighbors, to hurt us. We need action now.
how are you able to keep up with all your constituents? Because I'm lucky. You actually answered my Instagram message because I was very surprised. I'm not gonna lie. I would think someone that's as busy as you would have less time to, be able to actually talk to their constituents.
Oh man, I I will tell you something interesting. I think a lot of my friends and friends in politics think of me as a very extroverted person. I'm actually pretty introverted too.
I
Um,
could never tell.
you,
I'm sorry.
that's good, I guess. Fake it till you make it. But I will say, I think being deeply committed to running for office, to securing this election, to becoming the next assembly member of this district, to fight for our immigrant communities, to fight for our working families, to fight for our LGBTQ communities, has, I think, awoken in me a new stamina and ability to just get out there, listen to folks, understand where they're coming from, right? And not even so much talk, because I think so often we're so used to the elected officials who talk and talk and talk and talk. And even this, right, is going on for a while for enough for me. But I think it's really important for me to get on the doors, or like when I met you on the street, and just say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. What's important to you? And sometimes people will say, we need more buses. We need more transit access. Or they'll say, what about these potholes? Or say, like yesterday I saw someone in Astoria and he was like, what are we doing about these utilities? They're out of control. What can we do? And I said, the assembly has gotten behind a proposal to have a rate hike freeze for 2 years. That's a good thing, but we need the state senate and the governor to get behind those kinds of proposals. You got to call them and you got to tell them that that's important to you. And so, I kind of use my social work skills and my past life as a therapist to ask more questions. What is important to you? What are the things that you are thinking about these days? What weighs on you? Often people will say affordability, my rent, my groceries, childcare. Most New Yorkers spend over $20,000 in childcare. It's just not affordable, and that's why they're leaving our city and our state because they can't raise a family here, and that's just not right. um, so how do I keep up with them? I do the best that I can. I get out there after work, after I work a full day of 9 to 5, I get out there with my clipboard, with my literature. I'm listening to folks. We have awesome volunteers. We have amazing staff who are willing to work with us, and I'm listening door to door and 34 is our motto.
That
Um,
is so cute.
yeah, yeah. But I'm doing my best to just listen and be with folks. And as they're telling us we're worried about this, we're worried about that. If I can point to something on our platform, right, whether that's a true livable wage, 30 by 2030, social housing that's not at the whims of real estate developers, or fully funding permanent universal childcare, if I can connect to one of those issues in our campaign, that's great. But even if I'm just listening to what's weighing on them, what they're thinking about, that is incredibly valuable, I think. And I'm finding that in doing that, I'm getting more and more into it and building more of an energy for it.
So you just stated one affordability is one of our biggest issues here in NYC. What
Yeah.
in your being in your going into your position, what will be your immediate solutions at least for working class families right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, most folks struggle with rent, struggle with paying their housing, right? And I think we absolutely need to build affordable housing, but I also think that we need to reimagine this conversation. I used to be on the community board. For folks who don't know, community boards are the most local form of government. It's about 50 members on a community board, and I was in community board one in Queens, which is Astoria, in different parts of Western Queens, and Astoria. And one of the things that they're in charge of, as are your city council members, are what's called land use processes. And basically that just means that when real estate developers want to build condos or luxury apartments or whatever the case is, they have to go to the community board and say, hey, we want to put forward an application, we want to build these apartments, this is how much they're going to cost, et cetera, et cetera. And too often we would have these different developers come to us and say, we want to build this, but only 10% could be affordable housing, or only 15% could be affordable housing. And then you ask more questions, you find out more about that proposal, and you're like, this is not actually affordable. Who could live who could live here? Not the immediate people in that surrounding neighborhood. I lived in NYC for a long time, and there were many big projects. One was called Innovation Queens, and I organized with my neighbors to push back on it because when we really looked at the affordability, quote unquote, there's no way that people from NYCHA or the surrounding areas were going to be able to afford those apartments. And so time and again, we are met with this imbalance in these conversations where real estate developers are like, we'll give you 10%, maybe 15%, sort of affordable. And that's not right. So there's a bill in the state legislature held by an assembly member in Brooklyn, a Democratic Socialist, Emily Gallagher, which would create a social housing development authority. And basically, what that would do is say, yes, we will build more housing, but we are going to center the voices of everyday tenants in that construction and in that development. And we're going to cap that rent at 25% of the overall income in the household, which is awesome, right? That follows the model of NYCHA or public housing, which is about 30%. And that's really important because most New Yorkers now are spending like 50% of their overall income on housing. That's just not sustainable. How could you spend about 50% of your income on rent and then groceries and then childcare and then transit and then all these other things? It is so hard. Working families are struggling to stay in our city while we are accumulating more millionaires and billionaires than we have had previously. That is a huge problem, and that has led to the biggest wealth inequality and gap that we have seen in our city and state in a very long time. And so housing is deeply important to me. I think we need to pass that legislation and fundamentally change the conversation about housing access and affordability in our city and state.
So I know a lot of people are going to hear me right now and be like, why am I asking about this? Because I am a partaker of, the cannabis industry, and I do support, the cannabis business, but I also see more so lately that with the more openings of these dispensaries and the the, the non legal stores, we're seeing a lot of later from the weed. We're seeing a lot of drug bags on our streets, and there's not a lot of cleaning being done. And I like
Mm,
we see about a month ago people are talking about the dog doo doo, but at the same time,
yeah, that's real.
like I agree with it because I don't like stepping in dog doo doo either. But at the same
Right.
time, all of this garbage is still being left around our area. As assembly member, what can we do? Because my dog almost ate like somebody's needle, and I'm like, you better get
Yeah,
away from that.
absolutely. Well, yeah, so a couple things there. You know, sanitation is mostly seen as a sort of city level responsibility, but I don't want to be the kind of candidate, nor do I plan on being the kind of assembly member that's going to say that's a city thing, that's a this thing, that's a that thing. For me, and as a social worker, if someone says, hey, I'm really concerned about these needles, I'm really concerned about this, not enough trash cans, not like what's happening with the dog poop, I think it's all important. Right. I think people who are really connected to their communities, I mean, I see it too, and it's not okay. I think that that means that in this time, and for folks who are paying attention, we have a New York City budget, or our New York City budget process is underway right now. And Zoran, Mayor Mamdani, is confronted with a big budget gap to plug in $5.4 billion, which makes it all the more important for us at the state level to tax the rich, to increase those taxes on those corporations on Wall Street that have been doing perfectly fine while jobs are being automated, workers are losing their jobs, and folks are leaving our state. It's also really important that we tax the wealth of these billionaires and millionaires that have only gone up in numbers. If we do that, we will have more revenue to bring down to the city so that we can have more sanitation, more garbage cans, right? More cleaning up of our streets, a better quality of life. The thing about the needles is real also. And we decriminalized syringes, I want to say 2 years ago, so in the state. That is important because if people are afraid, people who use drugs, right? And we know that people use drugs and they have for a long time. Um, but I think the question is not so much are they or are they not going to? They will, right? We just know that to be true. But how can we ensure that they are doing so safely, right? Vis-a-vis harm reduction. So if folks are afraid to carry around needles, for example, then they're much more likely to drop it in the streets or, throw it wherever they, because they're trying to get rid of it and they're not trying to be criminalized as a result of carrying this. So even though that was important, I also think at the same time we should start to think about, can we set up uh, specific kinds of garbage cans. They have this in different cities across the country, where if you have a needle or you use drugs or other cases, you can safely dispose of them there, and we can get rid of them in a way that is safe, without criminalizing people simply for using drugs. So I think that that's something that we need to think about too. But I think all of this is dollars. We're talking about needing resources in the city to do these things, which is all the more important that everyday folks, Astoria, right, in Western Queens, push their elected officials, their assembly members, and their senators to get behind these taxes on the ultra wealthy so we can have the resources necessary to make our streets cleaner, safer, and healthier.
Do you feel like our district has enough resources? Because you did touch on substance abuse and overdose, being that you were a social worker. Um, as someone who lost three siblings to overdoses,
I'm so
it,
sorry.
thank you. Do you feel there is enough resources within our district that actually help?
I think that for too long we have treated healthcare like a commodity or like something supplemental. It is a human right. It is essential. And in so many countries across the world, it is treated that way. It is only in this capitalist nation where everything has to be attached to some sort of revenue or money or bottom line that we are treating it as extra. We absolutely need to pass things like single payer healthcare in New York State and across our country. The New York Health Act is one bill that would do that here in New York State. I fully support that. It would create a progressive income tax that would allow us to all get universal health care, regardless of wherever we live or employment status or anything like that. I think those are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about. Right? We saw COVID decimated our communities, and so many folks died. I still, think about
Unnecessarily.
unnecessarily. Correct. I still think about this exhibit that I went to, like in Manhattan, of immigrant New Yorkers who died across the city from COVID, and that's because even though immigrant communities generate billions of dollars in revenue for the state, we still treat them as the other, right? We don't have comprehensive immigration reform. We don't have single payer healthcare access. We continue to stigmatize, as we were talking about before, people who have different health needs, whether it's people who use drugs who need safe and clean syringes, or whether it's people with mental health issues who need access to care if that's what they choose for themselves. And so I do think that our city and state needs more resources. We know that the more resourced communities are the safest communities for everybody involved. And so I think that what we are talking about on this campaign, where we are talking about as democratic socialists, is a city and a state where we could redistribute that economic power to everyday folks like you and I to ensure that we have our basic needs met, whether that's healthcare, whether that's housing, whether that's childcare, whether that's food. Food insecurity has increased in our state since COVID, if not more so. And it's really unfortunate that people are choosing to either pay their rent or have food for their families on the table, or are choosing to forego their insulin or other medical needs because we don't have the resources that we need, because we have a billionaire millionaire class that continue to frankly buy elected officials to continue to line up their own pockets, right? Think about the AI industry. Think about the tech oligarchs who are making more and more money as so many jobs and sectors are being automated and workers are losing their jobs, but they're making tons of money not caring about the impact on everyday folks. So I don't think that working people across our city and state and our country have enough resources. I think we absolutely need to increase those taxes on the ultra wealthy to redistribute that economic power and those resources. But fundamentally, we need to start thinking about all of this not simply as um, things that happen. There are political choices that our elected leaders at the national level, from the House leader to the Senate leader. These are choices that they have made to prioritize these powerful interests, these moneyed interests, over the needs of everyday folks.
What changes do you want to see within our MTA and our public transit?
Oh yeah. Well, I absolutely think that we need more buses. I know we've had this bus redesign, and that's been very frustrating to a lot of my neighbors. And the idea has been to make things more efficient and more expedient. But there are a lot of older adults who can't just simply walk a lot more to get to the next bus. And I think that we need to talk about what a fully funded MTA looks like on an ongoing basis, not just here and there whenever the governor's up for reelection or some other folks are. There's actually a ton of different sources of revenue for the MTA that are not codified. What I mean by that is, for example, there's an internet sales tax that every year we have to appropriate it. We have to redesignate it to the MTA. Instead, we should and that, by the way, is a gimmick from the Andrew Cuomo days, where he would use the budget of the MTA to hold things over legislators, to sort of get them to support what he wanted in his budget. But public transit is a public good, and we all need it. I use the bus and the train all the time to get to work or to and from campaign things. And it's not just, again, it's not a commodity. It is an essential for New Yorkers across our city. And if it's an essential for New Yorkers across our city, then we should be fully funding it and not playing games with the sources of revenue for the MTA. We should just fully remit things like the internet sales tax and other things and have more transparency in our MTA budget so we can increase those buses, so we can make those trains faster, 6 minutes, at least. But there's too many New Yorkers who every day are so frustrated because their trains are running super late because the MTA still doesn't have the resources that we absolutely need.
I'm one of them.
Right, right. I think we've all taken those pictures of the signs with the wait being like 10, 15, 20 minutes, and we're like, might as well walk, right?
Or the horrible, like, the moment it starts saying delay, you know it's over in New York
It's
City.
over. Yeah, no, that's for sure sign.
Do you think though, if they make it more transparent, will it also become more affordable for us? Because they just recently brought it up to an even $3.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, this is why, and I go back to this because I think it's really important, because everything that we're talking about, public transit, healthcare, housing, universal childcare, food, all of these are necessities. And forever, the right or even moderate Democrats have said, well, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? Well, if we could stop giving tax breaks for things like yachts, jets. I mean, we give tax breaks like that in New York State for these things that I don't have a yacht. I don't know anyone who does have a yacht. I don't know anyone who has a
I got a
helicopter
toy
or a
yacht.
jet.
Like
What was that?
I got the little toy sailboat.
Right, exactly. That's about as close as any of us are maybe getting to a yacht. But why do those folks get tax breaks for things like that when our small businesses are closing? And for folks who are in Astoria, right, like the Brass Owl is going to close. That is heartbreaking. But that is also the result of political choices that for so long are things like We give tax breaks for folks who own yachts and jets, but we can't even get commercial rent stabilization for our small businesses like the Brass Owl and others across Mars Boulevard who just want to stay in business and who are like, why am I paying on one side of this boulevard this amount of money and then the other side is a whole different amount of money? It's ridiculous. And our small businesses are really the backbone of our neighborhoods, and we should be doing more to protect them. And instead, we're seeing, the Amazons of the world and such just get wealthier and wealthier, or the Bezos of the world get wealthier. So that's something that's deeply important to me.
I want to shout out my friend Letitia, one of my oldest friends of almost 20 something years, and damn, we're fucking old. I'm sorry, I mean to curse, but I'm old. But she wanted me to
Okay.
touch on the mega casino that's coming to our
Yeah.
area. How do you feel about it, being that this is also something your predecessor is also currently supporting?
Yeah. I do not support a casino. I think that putting more money into the billionaire class, like Steve Cohen and such, is not the route that we want to be going. If we want affordable housing, again, we had the Social Housing Development Authority bill that we should be passing. If we want more jobs, then we need to regulate AI, increase funding for employment services for people across the different points in their careers to support them in doing that. If we want to increase revenue, again, there's a host of bills that would generate revenue from increasing the corporate tax to transfer tax on stocks, or an heirs tax for when you like leave something to an heir that is like of a lot of wealth. There's just so many different options that we have, and I think that the myth of millionaire or billionaire or capital flight has been disproven so many times, right? All this like notion that, oh, they're going to leave the state then, and they're not going anywhere. They're not going to go anywhere. This is a financial capital of the world, and they're doing perfectly fine here. And yet, at the same time, we have folks who are struggling to make ends meet. So I do not support the casino. I think, union jobs, I'm all for it. Affordable housing, I'm all for it. Park space, I'm all for it. And we can push our elected officials to do more with the tools that we have to ensure that we have the revenue and the resources necessary to take care of our folks.
Make the Road, which is one of your major endorsers, does support the casino, though. Doesn't it eventually become a conflict of interest as they support you?
I think you'd have to ask them. I am proud to have gotten their endorsement. They have been working in immigrant communities for a long time, and working on things like making sure that our sex workers on Roosevelt Avenue are safe, our street vendors are safe, fighting for workers' rights, fighting for coverage for all, like I talked about, healthcare access for undocumented communities. Again, this is the results of a billionaire class that get to hire whomever they want for these projects and put forward this as an only option. And that's why taxing the rich is so essential, because we need to push back and fight back on this machine that continues to try to just exploit and extract wealth to a little bit, or not even so much wealth, extract resources from our community at their detriment. And I do think that that's why we need to push the governor and other state leaders to support increased taxes on wealth and the ultra rich.
So we did talk about the issue, but let's talk a little bit about you, right? Did you
Sure.
ever did you ever think, because this is also a show about reflection. Uh,
Mm,
so while you're doing all these amazing things, did you ever think, as 7-year-old Brian, that you
mm.
would be making the difference that you're making right now?
No. And to be honest, sometimes I'm not sure how much of a difference um, we make sometimes, to be honest. And I'm not saying that to say that this is not important. It is important to run for office. It is important to elect working class folks. At the same time, we need fundamental change. We need elected officials who are not at the whims of their donors, whether it's the millionaire or billionaire class, whether it's the real estate industry, whether it's big pharma or police money or any of these things. Um, but it does matter when we elect more of us into the state legislature. At 7 years of age, I was homeless. I was sleeping on my aunt's couch. I was falling asleep at school. I was anxious all the time. I was crying myself to sleep. It's a reality that over 100,000 students across our city experience every night. It is heartbreaking. It is wrong, and it is a choice. And no, I honestly remember not very much on a day to day basis around that time because it was so traumatic. But I want to use that history and that pain to turn it into something meaningful, um, to be able to take those sorts of stories um, that I've heard as a therapist, but even as a neighbor, to the halls of Albany and say, look, this isn't just me. This is everyday folks like the family that I saw yesterday that were talking about how important it is for us to do more about ice. It is about the gentleman that I met yesterday in Astoria, who was like, I need you guys to do more about these utilities. They're ridiculous. I'm paying so much for Con Ed. Like, who can keep up with this? Um, it is about everyday folks. And so I didn't think that I would be here. I am committed to this, and we're running a full race. And if folks have not signed a petition, please to sign a petition when you see our folks out there. And if you haven't visited our website, please visit it at www.brian, BRIAN, the number 4, and y.com. In case you can volunteer, join us on the doors, listen to your own neighbors, organize with us. It matters to elect more democratic socialists and leftists and working class champions to the legislature. And no, I didn't think I would be here, but I am here, and I am deeply committed to this work, and to doing the best that I can for our folks.
What do you do to make sure you're good, especially since you are such a big advocate, being a social worker, being about mental health? It's not easy doing what you do.
Oh, I have an awesome therapist. I see him about twice a month, virtually. That's really important to me. It's been a little bit hard to keep it up sometimes because the schedule can be so wild between a full time job and campaigning. But I'm lucky to have a good therapist. I have a really supportive partner who is really awesome. A very cute dog who is very cuddly.
No.
Um, yeah, he's the best. Um, but I also have really amazing friends who are in politics and who, 1 minute we're talking about the elections and campaigns and stuff, but the next minute, like, we go out dancing. I love going out to the bars of Jackson Heights, the gay bars in Jackson Heights. It's kind of where I grew up, and I still go. I think sometimes people say, like, if you're running for office, should you still be going out? And I'm like, I am going to go out and dance because I need to take care of myself so I can get back out there and do the thing. And I plan to continue being that kind of a person. And hopefully I can get to the gym more regularly. But it's hard to do self care in this work, because it's always in your face, the need, the deep need, and the real issues that are confronting our neighbors. So it can be hard. I'm doing my best. Um, but yeah, going out every once in a while and shaking it off, I think has been helpful.
What are the common misconceptions people will have about you?
Huh. Uh, I don't know. I guess I'd have to ask people, but um, I'm an open book. I'm happy to have folks ask me about who I am, what I believe, what I think in. I think the misconception was what I said before, which is I think sometimes people think that all candidates are supposed to be super extroverted, like very high energy kind of people. At the end of the day, I may not be very good at it, but I do think that after a while, I need to just shut off, and just sort of like take care of myself. Whether that's like, honestly, I've been watching Game of Thrones for the first time ever. That's been kind of nice. Although there are like real overlaps between those kingdoms and all those lords and some of what's happening these days. So that's, not that much of a
What
disconnection.
what season are you on?
I think I'm on 5 or 6.
Okay, so you okay. So I apologize for what happened after 6. I'm just saying that now.
Uh oh no. Okay, I hope it's
It's not in a
um
bad way, but it's just like, well, for me, it was the last season was just a letdown for me.
no, really. Oh man, okay.
Because I spent I spent the good entirety of that series not watching it. Because I didn't want to fall into the fad. And then my
Mm,
sorority sister,
mm-hmm.
she wouldn't leave me alone until I saw it. So I
Mm.
binged all 8 seasons in a matter of 2 weeks. This was while
Wow.
the 8th season was currently live.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy up until. Did you see the Red Wedding already?
Wait, the Red Wedding. Yes, I did. That was wild.
I was happy up until then, and then it started becoming lackluster for me.
Interesting, yeah. It's it's got some ebbs and flows. And again, like sometimes I'm like, yes, Khaleesi, Queen of Dragons, love it, goals. But then we go back
They
to the
shouldn't have killed
oligarchs.
Jason Momoa.
What was that?
They should. They should have kept. Like, I get it. Like, he did take advantage of her. We're gonna say that nicely because this is online. And we don't know if some people actually watch the show, so we're not trying to be complete spoilers.
Oh, true.
But you know, when she fell in love with him, though, from the Stockholm syndrome and everything down the
Mm,
line, you actually
hmm.
started rooting for them.
Yeah, it's been a nice little disconnect, but yeah, sometimes it gets a little real. Survivors' rights, another thing that we need to do more about in Albany, actually.
What?
Not
I'm sorry.
not to
Repeat that.
bring I mean, like there's a lot of victims of sexual abuse or domestic violence.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor of domestic violence myself, and I think that there's more that we could do in Albany for survivors of violence. Not to bring it back immediately to the policy stuff, but it's a thing that continues to happen in the show that I'm like, this is like,
Oh, it brings up a lot of things because it's realistic in the sense of it's happening now.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you are right. There is not enough that's being done for sexual abuse victims, domestic violence. But I also feel like when Roe v. Wade got overturned,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it took down the validity and the importance of actually doing something.
I mean, it was a very violent thing that happened, right? To strike down Roe and the right to an abortion is incredibly violent. It robs people of their bodily autonomy. It says that we can be treated however we want, mostly femmes, women, and folks who can give birth. But yeah, that is something that Assemblymember Gonzalez Rojas, my previous boss, who's now running for Senate, worked a lot on most of her career, um, and she's really really taught me how to think about everything as a reproductive rights issue or an abortion rights issue, and again, something I'm hoping to support and do more of when I hopefully am so lucky to become elected as the next assembly member.
So, what is the next part of the process for you now that you got the votes or the signatures? I apologize.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that's a good question. So now that we got the signatures, we will be dropping them off, I believe, on Monday to the Board of Elections and saying, here's all of our signatures. Um, I believe we qualify for this. They will review the things, and then we are officially confirmed that we will be showing up on the ballot around June. And then basically from April until June 23rd, we will be running a full field program where we are going to be knocking on doors. We're going to be out on the streets. We're going to be doing some phone banking. We might be doing some texting, etc. Maybe some TV interviews, etc. to talk to folks about our platform, where we want to protect our immigrant and LGBTQ communities. We want to make our borough, city, and state more affordable, whether that's a true livable wage, social and affordable housing, universal childcare that is permanent, and we want to tax the rich. So we will be out there, our awesome volunteers, our incredible staff, right? Shout out to Monica and Ria and Jeremy and Mia, who honestly I could not do this without. And we'll be talking to our neighbors about why we think we are the best situated candidate to be the next assembly member and how we're going to fight for them and continue to build this coalition of political groups and labor unions and neighboring elected officials who believe in our vision for a more affordable Queens where we can all thrive.
You know, I've been so I started like just my collegiate journey. I was uh history major in college, and then I put myself through work, through school, through working in nightclubs, working in entertainment, doing
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, right? But it came to a point where I've like been so immersed in it, where now sitting here and talking to you, you know, it makes me realize, that I'm not as involved with what's really going on with the world around us. So I want to thank you for putting a light on to what's been going on in our communities, because it is more than just what all of this is bigger than us at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
we need all the community support we can get. I work in the Bronx, so I see these kids
Mm-hmm.
that are suffering, whether it's abusive homes, or
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know,
Asthma.
just even just they're depressed because they don't know how to regulate their own feelings, because there's not enough resources for that.
Mm-hmm.
And just being a working in a community center like I do, and seeing that we're struggling because of the future legislator, changes in DYCD, everything that's
Mm-hmm.
happening, and you're sitting here, you're telling us is, more, and I'm really, it makes, I want to urge everyone, if you did watch this interview, to go look into what's really going on in your communities, because it is more than just, the parties, which Jackson Heights does have the best gay bars. I'm just saying, pardon.
It does.
But, but we also need to go save Fresco's Cantina, because they're
Yes,
going through it.
totally.
Like,
Totally. Yeah, and they're having something on the 29th. If folks can come out and support, there's a GoFundMe. I think I have it linked up in my social media somewhere, but if not, we'll do that. We could always visit, look for them. Fresco's Grand Cantina on IG. They have a GoFundMe up. But yeah, we need to be more involved in our communities and supporting our folks. And that's, Brian Martinez is the owner there. It's an LGBTQ Latino owned business. We want to keep them in our neighborhood.
and
But
he always gives back to the community.
always, he's so awesome. Always.
Like, first of all, he made it cool for my part of Astoria, because that area by LIC High School,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
Sanford, all of that. There,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
was a rich. I'm Greek. I grew up to a
Yeah,
predominantly racist neighborhood. So to see, we have Icon down the block, we have Fresco's
yes, yes,
Cantina. So it's amazing to see the progression in our area. So we need to
totally,
help, and he helps the independent artists. He throws shows. He unites his community. So,
totally. Yeah, and
um
to your point, one other thing that I just want to plug maybe before we end here tonight is, it is really important for sure for folks to run for these state legislative seats, Assembly and Senate. But it's also really important, like you said, to get involved at the hyper local level. So we have some amazing candidates that I am running with and supporting, like John Scott. Actually, he's right here, who is running for state committee. We have Andres Miguez, who is running for district leader in Astoria. We have Carolina Korth, who is also running for district leader in Astoria and Jackson Heights, the same neighborhoods. I want to encourage folks to vote for them too and support them because we fundamentally have to reform our Democratic Party to listen to everyday folks while we're also pushing at the state level to do what we can. So thank you for saying that. And yes, we have to be engaged at the local level, and we can do that.
So, Brian, I asked this last question to all my guests, right? When it's all said and done and you close your eyes for that last time, what do you want to be your legacy to be remembered for?
Oh, I feel like I've gotten this question about legacy before. Um, I don't know that I have thought about that very much. I just want to fight for our folks now more than ever. It feels like the right time. I have to be honest. Like when
Go
people ask me to do this, I was like, guys, I'm tired. I've been doing this for over 5 years, and government is not easy. Um, and if ever there was a time to dig deep for whatever reserves of energy there are to do this and to fight hard, protect our communities, and deliver for them, now is that time. And if people do remember this campaign and hopefully if I'm elected, I want them to remember somebody who was dogged about making sure that we are fighting for our neighbors, all of them, all of us, across our district. No matter who you are, where you came from, whether you vote for me, whether you don't vote for me, whether I meet you or I never meet you, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I want to make sure that we are fighting for all of our neighborhoods and delivering for them. I think I had the experience, the values, and the history there, and I'm going to work very hard to make sure that I do that.
Well, I'll definitely now, especially now that I get to talk to you more, I'll definitely be supporting more.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thank you for what you're doing for our community. Thank you for being the only politician I've seen in the last couple of days that actually recognized Greek Independence Day and Greek
Of
Heritage
course.
Month. So I want to thank you for that.
Always.
I, again, I love all my cultures,
Yeah.
but there's not enough recognition for the Greek community.
Yeah. I grew up
Unless
in
you're
North Astoria, so I love our Greek neighbors. I eat at the restaurants all the time. And yeah, happy Greek independence to all of our folks. Also, happy Bangladeshi Day to our
yeah,
Bangladeshi community because that's today. So Queens is the best, truly.
I love our little melting pot. But we are gonna see each other on May 30th.
Yeah,
That'll
looking
be
forward to it.
that'll be right before that's the actual election starting, or that's
Election is June 23rd.
so right before the election. So I'm very looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
What's going on for you as far as where they could find you, any events you want to shout out?
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, you can visit us at www.brian, BRIAN, the number 4, ny.com. You could also follow us on social media. It's the same handle. It's at Brian, BRIANR, the number 4, NY. Follow us on social media, whether that's X, IG, Blue Sky. You can find us on Facebook too. Get involved, stay connected, and we look forward to seeing you on the streets.
Guys, we are one episode away from our season finale. We're getting ready for 9 years of Welcome to the Rawrrzone. Follow us everywhere at Rawrrzone NYC, www.rawrzonenyc.com. We'll be back Monday with Rainstorm. Please support Brian Romero. Please support our give back. Please support the shows on
Yes.
the network. We got Neighbors, we got Gorilla Talk podcast, we got the Ivy Talks. We also work with different blogs. Get involved with them. Get involved with the lesson of the day. Get involved with your local legislator. Be available for your community because you never know what's gonna happen next. Whew. And I did this interview and only cursed once, so I feel like that's a whole accomplishment.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Katie, and thank you to
Thank you
everyone.
so much
Support Raw Zone.
thank you so much for putting up with me and my
It was
nervousness.
awesome.
And
You're
um,
great.
I close this out with a very it's motivate. It's a very motivating message, but it will make you laugh. So I leave this with everyone tonight.
I've got one more thing to say, and it'll only take me a second. I've got 2 words that I want you all to remember. They're very important. And if I leave you with anything, I'm going to leave you with these 2 words. And those 2 words are, I'm Batman.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh my